Long before you ever choose a partner, your brain is already building a blueprint for love. That blueprint comes from your very first relationships in life. Psychiatrist John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory, called these blueprints internal working models. They're unconscious maps that quietly predict how relationships are supposed to feel. If early love came with unpredictability, criticism, or distance, your brain may have learned to treat that as normal. Not as a problem, but as the definition of connection itself. Developmental psychologist Mary Ainsworth studied this in her strange situation experiments. By just 12 months old, babies already show distinct patterns in how they connect with caregivers. These early patterns don't just fade away as you grow up. Long-term research, like the Minnesota study of risk and adaptation, followed children for decades. It found that early attachment often shows up again in adult relationships. So, if healthy love feels uncomfortable sometimes, that discomfort isn't a flaw in who you are. It may just be an old prediction system still running in the background. Here's the part that matters most. These are called working models for a reason. With enough awareness, they can be updated at almost any age. Your brain evolved to value predictability over pleasantness, even when pleasant would feel better. In evolutionary terms, a known threat was easier to survive than an unknown one. Psychologist Robert Zajonc documented something called the mere exposure effect. People tend to prefer things simply because they've encountered them again and again, including patterns in relationships. This is why chaos can feel strangely like home for someone who grew up surrounded by it. While calm, steady love can feel like unfamiliar territory the brain hasn't mapped yet. Researchers describe the brain as a kind of prediction machine. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett's work suggests emotions themselves are built from predictions based on past experience. So, when a steady partner acts in ways your blueprint never expected, it creates a mismatch. And your body often reads that mismatch as unease, not as something new and good. That unease can get mislabeled fast. No spark, wrong person. Something feels off, when really, the alarm is about unfamiliarity, not incompatibility. Safe and familiar are two completely different things, even though they can feel identical in the moment. Realizing that difference is often the first real shift that starts to break the cycle. According to Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, your nervous system constantly scans for cues of safety and danger. He calls this neuroception, and it happens entirely below conscious awareness. For people who grew up with inconsistent love, anxiety can start to feel like part of attraction itself. The racing heart, the hypervigilance, the obsessive thinking, all of it gets tangled up with chemistry. That creates a confusing loop. The calm you feel with a healthy partner can get misread as an absence of chemistry instead of what it actually is. Research on the misattribution of arousal backs this up. The classic shaky bridge study by Dutton and Aaron found people often mistake fear-based arousal for romantic attraction. So, the intense, addictive feeling many people chase may not be passion at all. It can be a threat response wearing a costume, adrenaline dressed up as desire. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, writes about how the body stores relational experience. It can react to the present based on the past, faster than conscious thought can catch up. Healthy love tends to activate a different state, one of rest and connection instead of alarm. If your body has rarely felt that state in a relationship before, it can genuinely feel like something is wrong. Behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something interesting about rewards. When rewards show up unpredictably, called intermittent reinforcement, they create the most compulsive behavior of any pattern he studied. That's the exact mechanism behind slot machines, which is why they're so hard to walk away from. And it's also the mechanism at work in relationships that run hot and cold. When affection arrives inconsistently, your dopamine system fires hardest during the uncertainty, not the reward itself. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky's research on dopamine and anticipation points to exactly this. A partner who loves you reliably removes that uncertainty, which means the dopamine spikes flatten out, and at first, your brain can register that as boredom. Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, authors of the book Attached, describe how this plays out for anxiously attached people. They can mistake an activated anxious attachment system for genuine passion. This may explain a painful pattern many people know well: feeling pulled towards someone unavailable, while feeling strangely flat around someone who's actually there. Understanding this can reframe a lot, especially the early phase of a healthy relationship. You may not be withdrawing from a good person. You may be withdrawing from a dopamine casino. When healthy love triggers that quiet sense of unfamiliarity, your mind can start looking for a way out. And in the moment, those escape routes can feel completely reasonable and justified. One common one is nitpicking, suddenly fixating on small flaws. Attachment researchers call this a deactivating strategy, often used to quietly create distance. Another is testing, unconsciously starting conflict or pulling away just to see if someone will leave. It's an attempt to force the new relationship to match the old, familiar blueprint. Psychologist Jeffrey Young, who developed schema therapy, calls this schema perpetuation. It's the tendency to recreate familiar emotional environments, even ones that cause pain. Some people notice something researcher Brené Brown has described in her work on vulnerability: a wave of shame or withdrawal that shows up right after a moment of real closeness. Others just feel bored, because the nervous system can equate calm with emptiness. Instead of recognizing it as the actual baseline of secure connection, psychologists sometimes call the skill of noticing these patterns an observing ego. And that noticing is the real difference between running the pattern and finally watching it happen. Sue Johnson, who developed emotionally focused therapy, describes secure love simply: a felt sense that your partner is accessible, responsive, and engaged, not constant fireworks. Relationship researcher John Gottman studied couples for decades in what's known as his love lab. He found lasting relationships are built on thousands of small moments of turning toward each other. Healthy love tends to feel quieter than people expect. Conflicts get repaired instead of weaponized, and Gottman found repair attempts predict a relationship's survival more than almost anything else. In secure connection, you don't lose yourself. Research actually shows secure attachment supports independence, what Bowlby called a secure base, where safety fuels exploration. Physiologically, secure love looks like co-regulation, two nervous systems calming each other down. It's reflected in oxytocin release and lower cortisol instead of the adrenaline spikes anxious bonds create. Passion still exists in healthy relationships. It's just built on safety instead of scarcity, and research on long-term couples shows desire can be cultivated on purpose. So if a relationship feels stable, respectful, and a little unfamiliar, that combination means something. It's often the exact signature of something genuinely new, which is what growth tends to feel like. Attachment researchers Mary Main and her colleagues discovered something hopeful. They called it earned secure attachment, proof that people with difficult childhoods can build secure patterns later on. The mechanism behind this is neuroplasticity. Psychiatrist Daniel Siegel's work shows that naming and understanding your patterns can actually reshape neural pathways over time. Practically, this often starts with tolerating the discomfort of calm. Staying in that unfamiliar feeling for a few minutes, instead of acting on the urge to flee or start a fight. Therapists sometimes recommend tracking your alarms. When unease shows up with a healthy partner, ask yourself if the threat is happening now or if it's a memory being replayed. There's a concept called corrective emotional experience, dating back to psychotherapy researcher Franz Alexander. Repeatedly experiencing safety where you once expected harm is what actually updates the old blueprint. Research on emotionally focused therapy is encouraging here. Studies suggest somewhere around 70 to 75% of distressed couples see real improvement. That's real evidence attachment patterns can respond to change at any age. The goal was never to force chemistry with someone wrong for you. It's to give unfamiliar, healthy love enough time and repetition for your nervous system to learn a new definition of home. If this video put words to something you've felt but could never quite explain, don't let that understanding fade the moment it ends. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel breaks down the psychology and neuroscience, quietly running your relationships, your habits, and your sense of self. Every video is built from real research and respected books turned into something you can actually use. Before you go, here's a small challenge. Drop a comment and share one moment when calm, healthy love felt strangely uncomfortable to you. You might be surprised how many people in this community have lived that exact same paradox. Your story might be the thing that finally makes someone else feel understood. Like this video if it gave you something real. Share it with someone who keeps choosing chaos over peace. And remember, the love that feels unfamiliar might just be the love you were never given the chance to learn.